Well, thankfully, we're joined via Zoom by economist Professor Peter Quartey for some analysis on this. We're so grateful that you joined us. What do you make of the GDP numbers, first of all?
I think the numbers look encouraging, although we're not back to the pre-pandemic growth targets or numbers. You will see that the oil GDP growth was a bit lower compared to the previous quarter, but then the growth, and when you look at the non-oil sector, it tells you we've grown by 4.6% compared to 4.0 that was recorded in the previous quarter. So it tells a story. It tells us that the oil sector has not recovered fully or considerably from the pandemic compared to the non-oil sector. And we've seen agriculture, as usual, being very resilient. Agric has been able to withstand the test of time. It's been able to withstand all the negative effects of the pandemic. So Agric is growing quite significantly. We're also seeing manufacturing growing quite significantly, although industry as a whole only grew by 1.3%. So again, it tells us that if Agric grows significantly and manufacturing also grows, these are two of the critical sectors that employs a greater proportion of Ghanaians, and therefore we should be able to see some improvement in employment and in people's livelihood if we're able to sustain this growth and even escalate the growth numbers.
Great. So it's quite obvious that you're not really surprised by the performance of these sectors, but you made mention about the oil sector and the fact that, it's kind of plummeted in the wake of these statistics. But how worrying could the trickle-down effects be to job employment and investment as well?
Well, the demand for oil has not picked up after the pandemic. Airlines, transport businesses, many other areas are not demanded as much as they used to be. But nevertheless, we've seen some improvement, though. It trickles down because the number of people employed there, the value chain process, people that are employed in the value chain, being upstream or downstream, if their incomes or livelihood is not improving or improves marginally, it has ripple-down effects on the other sectors and also on other people as well. People employed there, their families, people who have businesses in the upstream or downstream business of oil. So there is some trickle-down effect, and certainly we should be able to grow that sector at a much higher pace. Whatever revenue we get from being oil or non-oil, I think we have to diversify the economy.
All right.
That is a basic story. There's the need for diversification so that when one sector goes down, the others will be able to pick up so we don't go into a major recession due to a major shock to the economy.
Great. But of course, if we go back to your early analysis on the agric sector, of course, it's been marginally performing. But do you think that we've done so much in terms of policy direction to sustain the resilience of the sector?
And I think to a larger extent, we've done well in terms of agri policies, the planting for food and jobs, and many others. But having said that, I think there's room for improvement. We need to target some key major players within the industry, large-scale commercial farming. I'm not saying we should downplay small-scale farmers, but large-scale commercial farming, which will pull the others, the likes of Blue Skies and others who engage outgrowers. Once we have the outgrower scheme on a larger scale across the country, that is the way to go. Then we'll be able to grow agriculture at a much sustainable level. There should be policies to ensure that we engage in more of irrigation. I don't think we are doing much with irrigation.
All right.
Our irrigated land is less than 2%, we are told. We need to do more irrigation so that we don't rely solely on rain-fed agriculture. That is not sustainable.
Well, also looking into the numbers, we realize that when it comes to the services industry, hotel and restaurant businesses are still struggling. How could this also impact on the prospective numbers?
Yeah, obviously, you will see the hotel and the hospitality industry not improving as much as we expected. And it's obvious because not many are traveling because of the restrictions on travel. whatever restrictions you have to, or checks you have to go through to travel, people are also much concerned about the virus and many other things. So we are not back to normal. We are in the new normal, and many are not enjoying the services of the hospitality industry. Hotels now are not operating at full capacity just because we are not patronizing. I wish we would have had access to the vaccine so that we would achieve herd immunity. When that happens, many more will step out there, many more would enjoy our environment, because people are made to move. We are not made to sit at one place. We are not made to be idle. We want to enjoy, we want to work hard, and also enjoy life. We want to attend conferences. We want to engage in many other economic activities within the hospitality industry. Unfortunately, we have not had access to the vaccine, and it's very unfortunate that the West is being selfish, in my view, in terms of providing access to the vaccine. There's a pandemic that is going to affect everybody, irrespective of your location.
Great.
And I will expect that the West will open up and ensure that African countries also get access to the vaccine. And so we all open up. Globally, if we all grow, it's better than if one sector or one country grows, or if you grow at the expense of the others.
Sure. Of course, this issue about the vaccine nationalism is much more of a concern. We currently do know that the U.S. is, hopeful of exporting close to about 500 million doses of vaccine to the COVAX facility. But Professor Quartey, if you're looking at these numbers, the economy growing by 3.1% from January to March, others might be of the argument that, of course, it's quite indicative that we are really recovering from COVID-19. From your perspective, to what extent of recovery is Ghana's economy experiencing currently?
I think if you even look at the last year's figure of 0.4%, we are about the seventh in Africa, or if not the world, in terms of our growth numbers. So it's encouraging, although we should be growing at 8 to 10% per annum. But we have recovered compared to where we were in the second and third quarters of 2020, where we recorded a recession. That is 2 quarters of negative growth rates. Now we are recording positive growth rates of about 3.1%. That is encouraging, and we need to work more. We need to do more. We need to do whatever we can to get access to the vaccine, get out of this pandemic, and move our economy forward. Of course, government should find revenue, find innovative ways of raising revenue, and be less reliant on borrowing, so that we can together sustain the growth process.
Well, Professor Quartey, before you leave, you are an economist. You have seen the economy grow and even contract. What should government do at this time to sustain this marginal growth that we've experienced in the first quarter of this year?
I think government has outlined beautiful policies in the CARES program. I mean, if you look at the CARES program, it is rich with ideas. So providing access to credit, providing training, infrastructure, cost of doing business, ensuring that cost of doing business is relatively low, and many other things we find in the CARES program and other programs. However, the source of funding is of concern because government is expecting that 70% of the 100 billion is earmarking for this program would come from the private sector. Already the private sector is struggling, so that for me is a challenge. That is why I said if government will find innovative ways of raising more domestic revenue from non-tax revenue, especially property rates, state-owned enterprises made more profitable, and many other areas, and also seal the leakages, we'll be in a comfortable position to finance the beautiful programs you find in the CARES program. And that, for me, would help sustain and even accelerate the growth process we are experiencing.
Professor Peter Quartey, we're so grateful, very much grateful that you joined us for your expert analysis on the story that we're following regarding the GDP growing by 3.1% from January to March. Well,